Hey friends, I wanted to apologize for this episode going up late, but I also wanted to let you know that there almost wasn't an episode this week. Rashawn's file got really corrupted, and for a couple days it looked like there wasn't going to be anything we could do to get it back, and we finally were able to get a copy of a file that is usable but sounds a little strange. So there are going to be a lot of like weird clipped moments in Rashawn's speech. It resulted in a file for her that was like 15 minutes shorter than mine, and I had to heavily edit it to match with my dialogue. But we have something, and that's what's important. I hope you enjoy the show.
This is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Some Spoiled, A Song of Ice and Fire 2, the co-host switcheroo, the rereading, Return to Westeros, HBO spoiler edition, uncut and censored, too hot for TV, bringing you the greatest hits from whenever. In this episode, we are reading chapters 6 and 7 of A Feast for Crows. Arya and Cersei, two of the most different ladies you'll ever meet. In these chapters, Arya finally arrives at Braavos and doesn't really know what she should do with herself. And Cersei thinks she should know what she should do with herself. But her uncle is like, hold up. Welcome to Unspoiled.
Monsters are dangerous, and just now kings are dying like flies.
I am the king!
Fuck the king.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha.
I'm Rashawn.
Okay, so first Arya chapter of the book.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised because, you gave me a heads up that there's going to be people that I don't see at all in this book, but I don't know who those people are. So each time we get a new POV, there's a little bit of excitement for me because I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Yay. This person is going to be in the book. So, and then we get another Cersei chapter, which we already had one of those, but, I did not mind getting another one because she's something else. She's something else entirely. She just is.
Yep.
So I really enjoyed being in her POV again because she just is wild. Being in her brain is you get whiplash. She really is like 1 minute here, and then in the next moment she has done a complete 180, and her thoughts are now over here, and then she's bouncing around. But she's always like. The fact that she is inconsistent does not seem to diminish her sense of confidence. She's not like the inconsistencies don't plague her. She's
not at all
filled with doubt. Like she doesn't know what to do. She seems very certain that she knows exactly what to do. And just reading it, you're just like, ma'am, two paragraphs ago.
Yep, you were like, oh, I trust him completely, and then immediately we're like, what a fool I was for thinking this. But that doesn't cause her ever to doubt her own judgment.
Not at all. Not even a little bit.
In fact, if she ever doubted her own judgment, it's like somebody else's fault that they got her to think a thing.
If she when the few moments where it feels like she might be experiencing just a sliver of self-doubt, it is immediately like her brain immediately course corrects to flip it to why it is not an indicative of her doubt and that she should maybe be concerned. Like you said, she just flips it so that it is the other person. So her sense of self is in a weird way almost unwavering, despite how much she actually does flip-flop around.
It's an unwavering
It is really something to
waveringness.
experience. But before we get into all of her hijinks, Cersei's mental hijinks.
Indeed, yes.
we have an Aria chapter, and I had to say, I really enjoyed the bit about sailing into Bravos. And I thought that he did a really, really good job capturing the sort of awe of that moment. And I have like a vague memory of from the show of her sailing in. I remember the Titan, and like how cool that was, to see on screen. And in my imagination, I think of someone who was a reader before the show came, and I feel like I wonder if this moment was a moment readers were looking forward to seeing on screen, because
I would say so.
I definitely would have
yeah.
been. It's just a really impressive moment, and it's just written really well. And then all of the stuff that she's thinking about as well, like the bit about someone saying that we're going home, and she has a moment where she is almost trying to let herself pretend that this is home, we're going home, but it's like a half of a second before she's like can't even really participate in that fantasy. She doesn't even let herself, And then we have a moment where she is reflecting on what her life has been throughout these books, and it's just really it's heartbreaking. I mean, this is all stuff we know because we've been reading it, right? We've been with her through all this, but to have it listed so matter-of-factly, like, people have been telling me they were going to get me home for a couple years now. And there's a line that says, she never seemed to find the places she set out to reach. Urin had promised to take her to the Winterfell, but she ended up in Harrenhal. And then, she fucking gets she escapes and is supposed to be going to River Run, and she gets fucking kidnapped and take to Hollow Hill, and then the Hound steals her and drags her to the Twins. You know what I mean? Just like this, she has been on this, like, this road trip for fucking years at this point, you know? Like, and just trying to get, like, do you remember fucking the very first, like, National Lampoon's Vacation movie? Do you ever watch those?
I can't watch those anymore. Like, I only watched them because my family was watching them. They gave me such deep anxiety, and I didn't have like the vocabulary for that at the time. But now I understand that's what was going on, because it was literally as much can go wrong as possible. And that's the whole plot, is like, we're going to have a series of misunderstandings, bad luck, worst case scenarios, and you just watch that for 2 hours. That's a literal nightmare. What are you talking about? That's not fun. That's not funny. It makes me groan in pain. Like, no. So anyway, yes, continue.
That movie has some such great lines. It's like, I haven't watched it in a very long time. I watched, the Christmas movie was on because it plays every year at Christmas, and so we watched some of Christmas this past year when I was at my brother's house, but I haven't seen the original one in forever, but it still has like some very quotable lines. But Arya's whole thing, like, just trying to get to fucking Wally World, and she just like cannot get there, just like, and so once again, we get a little reminder that as she boarded the ship, she had really desperately tried to get them to take her as close as she could get to like Eastwatch, so that she can kind of try to like hook up with John at the Wall, and that just wasn't going to happen. That's not where that ship was going. So she just ends up going to Bravos with this coin that she's got. And I love the description also of the city.
It's really cool sounding.
It really, really is. And I remember from the show what's like once she's there. I remember some of the plot points and everything, but I don't remember outside of the sort of like whoa moment when they first are sailing under the Titan of being particularly impressed one way or the other with the location of Bravos. Like, I don't really remember being like, oh, wow, that shit looks super cool. Like, it was just sort of another location once they were there. But this description of the way the city is set up, and I love this mention too when she's looking at everything and she has this moment of realization, like, oh, trees. They don't have any trees. Everything here is
Because she's like, none of these houses are made of wood. That's weird. What's going on?
So I just loved like all the detail of this new place where we are, you know, that we're seeing for the first time. And there's this great bit too when she's being rowed. Once, you know, they tell her that, you know, she can basically, we're here now. You have to get off the ship and good luck to you. And somebody kind of rows her ashore, and this whole city is built like, I don't know what the words are. It's like Venice, you know, there's canals everywhere, you know, like all these little bridges that connect from piece to piece. So the way that she's being ushered in through the city is via these little canals and stuff. And it's just like a really cool description. And the guy that's taking her, they start talking about religions, and Bravos has like, everybody is free to worship whomever they want to worship here. So there are all these different temples that belong to these different religious sects. So we get like a description. There's like a temple for the red god here. There's something that I feel like is new called like moon something. What are they called?
Oh, right. I forgot that they mentioned that. Yeah, I'm not on that spot. So when I find it, I'll mention it. But there's something about it being like so like kind of cobbled together above the water and not feeling like it's on land quite properly. Like it is, like they're little islands, but combined with the fact that it's all of these different religions that are mixed together, that gives the whole place a really like interesting feel that I wish we'd gotten to see a little bit more of in terms of what the architecture would look like.
Right.
If you've got this many people clumped together, you know?
Yeah, it's and then it seems like they're the Bravosi are like their own people with their own history and everything, but there's something about the description of the city that feels like it's more international, for lack of a better word, because it's like a city that we know from the show, you know, there's like a lot of money there, but also I guess it's like a lot of sailors from all around the world that like are coming in and out of these ports here for various like merchant and trade and stuff. So it just has like it has a flair, it has a flavor that feels like there are people from all over, all living in this one sort of like small place, you know? So it's got like a real, almost like New York City kind of energy, you know what I mean? Like you'd be walking down the street and you're going to hear people speaking to each other in like all these languages from around the world.
Moon singers.
That's what. Yeah.
The both of us. Look at us. It's crazy.
And there's a moment too when they're first sailing in, where the big statue, because she's when Aria's chapters open, she's talking to the son of the ship's captain. Who is like one of the only other people on the ship besides the captain himself who can speak the sort of common tongue. So that's who she spends most of her time with. Though we find out that a lot of the other men on the ship are quite fond of her and have given her all these gifts and like insistent that
isn't that so cute?
It's very sweet. And I got nervous because I thought it was going to like take the turn, but it doesn't. You know, like,
what's the turn?
She's a young woman on a ship with all these men that are being nice to her. I thought any second I was going to turn the page and one of these creepers was going to like be sneaking up into her bed at night or something like that, you know. But that doesn't appear to have been any of that, which was just deeply refreshing, and also I was happy, you know.
There's also something, and I'm not sure if you quite got this, but this was my interpretation, because there is a vibe from the captain, like he really wants to get rid of her by the time they get there. And there's also the fact that he is like, remember the service that I did for you. And when she gets dropped off by that guy, he's like, well, yeah, you know my name.
They all say it.
Right.
Yeah, when the ship's crew people they're all making sure that she knows their name, and she even says, but none of them seem interested in what my name is. Like nobody ever asked what my name is, but they're all like, they all want to make sure I know their name, because the way she's gotten on the ship with the coin and the words that has signaled something to them that she doesn't understand yet. So yeah,
I think that's what the gifts are. I don't think it's necessarily that they're even fond of her. I think it's that they are they are afraid of her
trying to
a little bit.
buy her off.
Yeah, you know, and they think like, here comes somebody who might be with an organization that is kind of scary, and
Right.
I would love to get on her good side if I can.
That probably is what maybe keeps her safe from the sort of like attack that I was concerned I was going to have to read about, you know.
Very well, maybe.
But so eventually, what I was going to say about when they're going under the Titan, I had forgotten that it like blows this crazy horn.
Mm-hmm.
And she like startles back, and the kid is like, "You don't have to be scared." She's like, "I wasn't scared. It was just loud."
I appreciate that every time anybody accuses her of that, she gets so angry.
Oh yeah,
like I can't believe you think I'd be dumb enough to be scared of this. It's a statue. Shut up. I'm not like that. I'm not like you.
I love that about her
God,
too.
Calm down. She's so defensive.
I really love that about her. That just sort of like, I'm not going to give anybody the satisfaction ever of admitting that I was scared of anything because fuck you.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know what I've been through, and you know what? They low-key don't know what she's been through.
They do not.
So she finally does get kind of like put ashore, and he drops her as they go through Bravo's. He basically drops her at the door of the what is it? Is it the House of Black and White?
Yes.
Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just basically like, here you go. This is
obviously where you're heading, right? And she's
this
like,
is it.
Yeah,
this is exactly where I was. Thank you. This is so convenient. This is exactly where I was planning on going. She has no idea where she is. And my God, she's banging on this fucking door, and like nothing is happening. That's what I was going to mention. It's not really important, but it just made me laugh about the Titan. She also remembers back to like Nan stories, and I always love when Nan stories show up in any of the kids' imagination. You know, we get it with John sometimes.
Agree.
And, you know, in Sansa sometimes, and with Bran, and now with her. So I'm always tickled by that. And the story is that like the Titan eats like juicy pink little highborn girls.
So gross.
Nan just out here telling these babies anything.
She just relishes getting to like scare the shit out of her. And it seems like, honestly, Arya relished getting the shit scared out of herself. So I guess it's fine.
Yeah, agreed. Bran too.
Mm-hmm.
Bran too. You know, was a big fan of the stories. Even when they would like sort of chastise Nan, that, you know, you got to stop telling the babies, you know, those horrible stories. And I think there was even a bit in the first book where Bran is like, I'm not a baby.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
It's also funny to me how much, like, when I was a kid, I would read so many stories where it was like, and then he was like, his throat was cut and he was put into a stew and they ate the stew. And it's just like, as a kid, I'm like, as they should. And as an adult, I'm like, that is a horrifying story. What? But as a kid, I'm just like, well, he was a bad guy. Yeah. Okay.
He had it coming.
Like, you just don't have
was
the
right
context
to do it.
for the reality of what that would look like. It's just a cartoon fucking giant pop with a witch cackling
like
over
a Bugs
it.
Bunny cauldron.
Exactly, you know? So getting context as you get older adds horror to everything, really.
God, isn't that the fucking truth? Jesus Christ. As you get older. So is there anything else I wanted to mention? There was also like this little bit as they're making their way to the House of Black and White, where they pass by this Sweetwater thing, and it's another like statue, but it's got water pouring in from somewhere and then pouring out, and that's where they all get their water from, and it's like where the better water is.
Yes.
But so yeah, I just love the setup of the city, and I hope because if I remember correctly, the show hung out in Bravos for a little while, but we had two main bits. There was the time Arya spent with like the mummers, or like the sort of like theater troupe where she was supposed to be killing that one actress that, I don't know if that's in the book or not, but that was like a show plot point, right? She was supposed to murder that actress.
Right.
So I remember the show spent like a lot of time with them. at this little theater. And then, of course, there was like the training, and I'm using air quotes because it felt like so much harsher than training that she underwent with like the waif at the temple. But there wasn't a lot of like city in it, that I remember. So I'm hoping that I get like a lot of good descriptions of what this place is like and what the people who live here are like compared to like the other people that I've met in Westeros and, around this like universe. So yeah, she shows up at this place. She knocks on the door, and it has the nerve to not open.
Nothing happens.
Nothing happens.
Yep.
There's also a moment too where she's thinking about the words of her father about how the lone wolf dies and the pack survives. And she's just like, yeah, he had it backwards. And I just had like, just kick me right in the stomach. Why don't you? Was that really necessary for us? Did we have to have that? We didn't have to have that. That was rude.
George just really twists the knife sometimes.
He really does. And, uncalled for, sir. Not cool. But, so yeah, she's at the door, and this thing is not fucking opening. And then she says the words, and the door opens with, like, no one opening it for her. It just opens from the inside, and she's like,
it's like the presence of the coin triggers it, like some sort of sensor. I don't know. It's weird.
And she's just like doesn't really know what to do with it. And then I think she's just like staring, and someone touches her. I think it's the little girl, right? Who just sort of like pops out of nowhere.
She pops up after the thing with the guy, because there's
my god, the guy that's sitting at the little fountain thing. She can hear the water, but it's like much further in, so she's just sort of like walking around in the dark trying to like figure out what the fuck is going on here. And there's statues all around, and I want to talk about this one thing real quick too while we're here. There is she says, her eyes start to adjust to the dim light there, and there's statues all around. And then she notices that there is there's a woman who's about 12 feet tall, and it says real tears were trickling from her eyes to fill a bowl she cradled in her arms. And then there's a man with a lion's head seated on a throne carved of ebony. And I mean, that could be anything. That doesn't necessarily have to be anything, right? But I'm reading a man with a lion's head sitting on a throne. And I'm like, okay, that's got to be something, right? That's got to be something connected to the Lannisters and what's going on. That can't just be a coincidence, right? I have no evidence to support anything. My brain is just like, well, they said it's a lion.
It feels like you really went off the deep end all of a sudden, and I wasn't ready for it. I feel like I can say with some confidence, there is no connection that I know of. Lions are pretty common imagery in a lot of...
like in my brain now, lions don't exist independently of the Lannisters, right? Like they sprung into the human imagination after the Lannisters, which makes no sense, right? Because clearly, but yeah. So now, like anytime somebody mentions anything about a wolf, I'm like, what's that code for? And if you mention a lion, it's got to be code. So I just thought I would share that because it doesn't take much to get me spinning out wildly. But yeah, so there's this amazing man.
I was genuinely like, where is she going with this?
Girl,
what?
Just going crazy. That's all. Just going crazy. But yeah, so there's a man just kind of sitting at the edge of this little pool, and he is crying and dipping his hand in the water and then like sucking on his fingers a little bit at a time. And she's watching this, and she's just like, "Oh, poor thing. God, he must be thirsty." So she goes over to him and fills a cup with this water from this pool that she does not know what's going on. She's doing a lot for somebody who has no idea what's going on in this moment.
She's in a position to help, so she thinks, and she's like, "Let me go ahead and do that."
Right. So she dips the cup into this murder water and offers it to him. And he says the words to her. She replies in kind, which has she gotten the translation for this yet?
I'm not sure. I don't remember if she has or not, like when he said it to her.
And I can't remember, like, I should remember because we were just talking about what's on the boat and everything, but I don't remember it being made clear if she understands what these words mean just yet. But he greets her. She replies in kind. She gives him the cup. He drinks it. And then gets up and is clearly in distress, holding his stomach. And then she's like, "Oh, you've been stabbed."
There's something about that cracks. I don't know. Like, it's a fucked up thing to laugh at, but you're stabbed. Like, the simplicity of it. It's 2 words, and it's a pretty dramatic thing you're saying, but not with any drama.
No, it doesn't.
It's just a weird moment.
Yep,
you know.
Agreed.
Yeah,
agreed. And the best we get is that she blurted it out. God, that was hard.
I have been having that a lot recently.
And then he just basically crawls to like a weird alcove that's in the wall, and then she notices that, oh, the wall is full of these things, and there's people in there, like, sleeping. And then part of her brain is like, no, they are dead or dying. I'm going to need you to look with your eyes. Look. Yeah. Right? So she's, like, just sort of processing what she's seeing and that what she's really seeing as opposed to what she just sort of assumed in the moment. And it's in that moment where she's, like, focused on that someone grabs her. And it turns out to be like this little girl, and she spins around and she's like, "Don't you grab me. The last person to grab me, I kill."
There's something about that moment where if you were like ran across a little girl who said that, you'd be like, "Ha ha ha, good one, kid." But then you're like, "Oh no."
Right?
Oh no.
And again, too, it's like, because I have like at least a little bit of context from the show, I understand where she is. You know,
yes.
If I hadn't seen the show at all, I wouldn't really know where she was. So her making that threat, I would just be like, well, I've been watching Arya for a minute, and yeah, she's been killing folks, so maybe you shouldn't grab her. But because I have an understanding of where she is right now, that threat just kind of, I'm like, oh, girl, you don't know where you at. Who kind of people you talking to?
The last person who grabbed me like that, I killed. Yeah, but you also just killed a man, handed him a cup of water because you didn't think about what the hell was going on in this room. So I wouldn't be so cavalier.
Right?
The concept of death here in particular, I'm just saying.
But and so then finally, this little girl doesn't speak the common tongue, so she can't really answer Arya. But there's a gentleman that also shows up out of the shadows, and I have to tell you, I so appreciate it. Is not necessary, but I love that it's included. Arya did not like the way they kept surprising her. Like, that didn't necessarily need to be included, right? But I'm so grateful it was, because that to me feels like absolutely how you would respond. Like, why y'all keep popping up on me like this though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I really appreciated that was included.
Yeah, it's just a really, everything about this place feels so eerie.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And adding on top of it, people just appearing out of nowhere and being like,
and then
what are you doing?
When they appear, like, this place is dark, you can barely see, and they're wearing these fucking hoods, so even when they do pop up, you still can't really see their face. You don't know who you're talking to and what you're dealing with. And all of that layer just makes this whole sort of moment of where she is so fucking creepy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep.
I wish that there are some very specific moments in the books, and I've talked about them, where I will actually just be like, fuck, I wish I had been unspoiled so that I could be reading this and be as in the dark as she is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, just I wish I could read this and not have an understanding of who she's with and what they're about, so I could just be like, what the fuck is this shit?
I mean, I'll say this. The show is very different. So you are not in the dark completely, but you don't know as much as you think you know.
Well, to be fair, The only things that I know when I talk about understanding where she is and what these people are is that I understand that that she's sort of in a death cult, that these are assassins, that these are very dangerous people, that dangerous and like that they could kill her before she even fucking blinked. You know what I mean? That kind of like danger. But I do know that, and this is in what do you call it? Being transparent about things that I've been spoiled on. I'll just tell you guys what I remember reading, but you don't tell me if it's correct, right?
Okay.
So you guys know how I knew about Stoneheart, but I don't know like what that arc is actually going to look like. I just knew that was a thing that happens, right? I remember reading ages and ages ago that there's a plot point that happens while she's in Bravos. I can't remember the details, but I remember that she gets a nickname, and I want to say it's like Cat something, Cat of the Canals, or something. I don't know, and that she's blinded. But I think she was blinded on the show. Was she blinded on the show?
Yeah, don't they do that on the show?
I think she was blinded on the show. But I feel like I read like in a comment thread that the show like dipped its toe into something that happens in the book, but like really shortens it, you know, or it doesn't go as like in depth into that particular plot point. You know, they kind of like get her in at Bravos and get her out, you know, without spending like that much time. So we don't see everything that she goes through. The waif was blind. Wasn't the waif blind on the show?
No, I don't think so.
I can't remember. I got it confused. I just remember that when she finally beats that girl's ass, it happens like in the dark. Like she lures her to a cave and they fight in the dark, and that's when she ends up winning. But I can't remember like the ins and outs of it. But that's about all I know about what happens to her in this time. I don't know how much of it's true. I don't know how much of it I got smushed around. You know what I mean? I don't know. But I just thought I would just be open about that.
All right. Well, I appreciate it.
But so a gentleman showed up and tells her that this is a place of peace, and I don't believe you, sir. But he says it, and he says it with a gentle voice, and he tells her that she's safe here, and that this is the House of Black and White, and that and says, you know, you're kind of young to be looking for the favor of the many-faced God. Like, you know, they're usually a little bit older than you when they show up here. And she's so cute. She was like, is he like the one with 7 faces? And he's just like, 7? That is not nearly enough for our God.
Yeah. I really do enjoy that bit.
Yeah.
Just being like,
No. There's way more faces than 7, young lady. And then she asked for Jacan by name. And the guy replies, I do not know this name. And she's so cute. She's like, well, he was from this place, and his hair looked like this. And he said he would teach me secrets. And then she shows her little coin. And this guy who she's calling a priest, you know, she says he looks at it, but he doesn't make any move to touch it or like take it from her.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I don't know exactly what that's about either. But then the waif is also like looking at it, and then finally the man is like, all right, well, tell me your name. And I hollered. I laughed so hard through this. I don't think it's supposed to be as funny as I found it, but it just really made me laugh. First, she says her name is Squab, and he's like, nah.
First, she says Salty, because that's the latest one.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It does. Yep, it does. It starts with Salty, then it goes to Squab. And then she tries the Nan, but they call me Weasel. And each time he's like, your name, your real name, your true name. And then finally she tries to pull off Ari. And he's like, close, but not it. And she thinks to herself, fear cuts deeper than swords. And finally she just fucking says it. She says her name at first as a whisper. And then she's like, you know what? I am Arya. How Stark, with like all this extra zest on top. That really wasn't like, right? But it's not like directed at him. But it's like the first time she's been able to say who she is out loud, and like how long, you know? Like, to a stranger,
Yeah.
it was like the Hound knew who she was, you know, and whatever, people figured out who she was. That's different. But this is like, she is saying it now out loud, who she is.
How do you think this guy knows what's not correct? Do you think he's just like good at sensing liars?
You know,
Or do you think there's like kind of something magical happening?
I don't know. I'll tell you this much. In the show, if I'm not mistaken, at some point, somebody with the face that we know of as Jaken, that actor, like, returns, right? I don't remember exactly when she
Right.
finally gets to see that face. I don't remember if it's that face the whole time, or if it's different faces she meets, and then finally it's his face. But I think I'm working under the assumption, the lazy assumption, that it's him, and he remembers who she is from having met her, right?
Ah, okay.
But that is because I really haven't put a lot of thought into it. So now that you're asking me, I don't have the answer to that. I guess maybe it is.
So
maybe
if
it
it were
is
him, when he says, I don't know that name, you think he was just like lying to her?
kind of, but all right. So this is where it all starts to fall apart in my brain, because I took it, because he doesn't say I don't know him. He says I don't know that name,
Right.
right? And there's I have like a feeling, and it, like, an impression, I guess is a better word for it, that with these people, because there's that whole, like, a man has no name and all that shit, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not about the name, like, that you could just use a name and then it throw it away, and you don't know it anymore, right? You have no use for it anymore. It doesn't exist anymore. That person that you were for that minute while you were doing that thing doesn't really exist anymore, because it's not about the name. You know what I mean? If that makes any sense whatsoever.
I get what you're saying, but he does seem pretty fixated on getting her name.
Well, she's not one of them, though.
Okay, I see what you're
Like,
saying.
in my imagination,
It's
that
like
that sort
agents
of
only
construct,
that get to have the freedom
sort
of
of
no
thing,
name.
you know.
I got you.
So I think I'm sort of operating under that. So even though he tells her I don't know that name, it didn't make it a disqualifier for me. Like, I didn't read that and go, oh, well, that's not him, then he's not from here. You know, I just took it as kind of like, that name, it doesn't mean anything to anyone anymore. You know, it was just something that was used, and now it doesn't. But it's very, very loosey goosey in my brain, y'all. You know what I mean? I don't know the idea of how he knows. Maybe it's not so much that he knows what her true name is, but maybe, like you said, they know when someone is lying.
Yeah.
You know, they can, you know, and that is not necessarily has to be magic. You know, there are, you know, things you can kind of learn, especially because she's also a child and not a great liar.
Yeah.
You know, it might not be that difficult to be like, she's full of shit. She's full of shit. Ah, there it is. There it is. That's the one. So yeah, and then he tells her, this is not a place for you. And then she pulls the fucking officer and a gentleman shit. But I have no place to go.
I feel like this joke would really hit harder if I knew what the fuck you were talking about.
Oh my God. You don't know that? Oh
Nope.
my God. So you know the movie An Officer and a Gentleman?
I know of it.
Right. So it's got the two famous scenes, right? The famous scene at the end, it's been like parodied throughout our entire lives, is, you know, he shows up in his dress uniforms and carries the woman out of her factory job, and that song is playing, you know?
Oh, is that?
Right. And the other bit is closer to the beginning, when he is joining the service, and it's is that Richard Gere, I think, is the actor in that movie, and then his, like, drill sergeant is Lou Gossett Jr., and Lou Gossett Jr. is just basically your, you know, you're not cut out for the Army. You're a piece of whatever, the Air Force, whatever they're in, right? You're not cut out for it, blah, 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 blah. And then he's like screams, sobs, but I got nowhere else to go. And it's like a really, really emotional moment of this movie. But I just cannot keep a straight face. I laugh every time I see it.
Oh man,
I'm gonna send it to you.
You are not somebody who gets real like dramatic with your reenactments or imitate. Like, so both times you have said it, you have gone for it, which really indicates to me the like level that scene is at.
To fucking see it, like I just go to YouTube and put in officers, and I got nowhere else to go, and it's you got it won like all these like awards and everything. It's like a very like critically acclaimed movie and everything, but I cannot take it seriously with it. It's
going
like it's
right
pouring
now.
rain. It's yeah. Did you find it yet?
I found it. Hold on, I'm about to turn the sound up so that everybody can get a vibe, because I don't know who else is unfamiliar. What's a DOR? Declaration of Resignation? This guy. Look at how young Richard Gere is. Oh my god.
Oh good, it was Richard Gere.
Yeah.
Oh, that's always the beginning. Yeah, you have to.
I'm jumping ahead a little bit here.
Yeah. Wait, here it comes.
Exaggerating a whit. Not one whit. Holy crap. That is so over the top.
People loved it. That song that plays when he carries her out of the factory is that love lift us up where we belong. You know that
okay.
But anyway.
I can't get over like the look on his face in this delivery. This is not good acting to me. This is very bad, actually. And I don't, like you said, it won awards?
I feel like it was a very well received movie. I don't know if they won Oscars and stuff, but I think it was nominated for bunch. I would have to like Google, the actual shit. But it was like a big movie. It was a huge movie, and yeah. It's like
these comments. One of the most powerful scenes in all of cinema. Richard Gere proved he was more than just a Hollywood pretty boy, a highly talented actor, and captivating and mesmerizing. Why he wasn't nominated for an Oscar is something I could never understand. Well, you're right about that. You sure couldn't.
I'm glad you laughed. I wasn't sure if it was going to be funny to anybody else.
That's just really bad. I'm sorry. Like no disrespect, but that did not feel real to me at all. But okay. I really enjoyed that little departure, though. Thank you for expanding my pop culture education.
So, yeah, we have that moment, but I think Arya handles it with a little bit more dignity.
Indeed. Very, very much so. Which really is saying something, because one thing Arya does not have, nor does she really care about, is
that is true, right?
Usually dignity.
So she tells him, please let me stay. I don't have anywhere else to go. And he asks her, do you fear death? And she says no. And he says, well, let's test that theory. Pulls back his little hood. And what we have underneath is like a Skeletor situation with only
Skeletor situation, great band name. Continue.
With like some scraps of skin, which I was not a fan of. And then just to, give it a little spice, there's a worm crawling out of an eye socket. And he says to her, kiss me, child. Basically like, oh, you're not scared of death? Well, come give this face a kiss. I dare you. And she
Which
says,
I'm like, well, maybe she's not afraid of death and she just doesn't like gross stuff.
you know,
Ever think
exactly.
of that?
First of all, I don't understand what that with your face has to do with death. You know, your face is just the unfortunate situation happening right now. But so she says to herself, "You think you can scare me with this fucking this? Like, do you know where I've been?" So she leans in, gives him a kiss right where the nose should have been, but was not, and then plucks the worm out of his eye and is about to eat it. But then the illusion, you know, sort of fades as soon as she does that. And
The fact that she thought,
listen,
let me try eat that worm just to fucking show him how business I am about this.
Cannot
Is insane
tell
to me.
you all how much I stan this little girl. Like, whether I always think she's making the right decision in the moment, you know, that comes and goes. But in my heart, just how here I am for her at all times remains unchanged.
Yep.
This sort of this sort of like fucking, I can't believe this motherfucker thought he was going to scare me with this. I'm going to show him just how not scared I am of this. Whether or not she actually has the fear or not.
Yes.
You know,
Yep.
It's not that she doesn't have it. I'm not saying in this moment that she's necessarily afraid, but that she doesn't often let her fear. She has figured out a way to work through her fear at almost every junction, whether that ends up being for good or for bad, right? She's just not a character that lets her fear of a thing keep her from doing the thing that's going to get her closer to whatever her objective is at the moment, right?
Yes.
And I just love that. And she's so fucking spiteful. Feels like it has the wrong connotation for what I'm trying to get to. Defiant is better. Yeah. She's just so fucking, this attitude that's baked in, which is just the fucking, I'll show you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she just has a fucking, I'll show you what the fuck I can do. At all times. Just, it's really remarkable. So even this guy, this priest, this death priest, right? This assassin, this guy who may or may not be magic. There's clearly some magic going on now. If I wasn't sure about earlier, is magic happening now? Because he just changed his fucking face in front of all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, "No one has tried to eat my worm before. Are you hungry?"
That's a good line.
You guys. I don't know what to do with myself. I really don't know what to do with myself.
We've got a vending machine back there. You don't have to resort to this.
I love that his face changes into what she describes as the kindliest old man she had ever seen, was smiling down at her. I am not interested in whether or not that is his real face. I don't even know if real face is a thing in this particular world and in this religion. You know, I don't really know.
Interesting.
I have decided, because it makes me feel good to decide this, I have decided he chose that face on purpose because he wanted her to see something that was like good and made her feel safe. You know, I have no idea if that's true or not. This might just be his regular old ass face. I really don't know. But I have decided that he chose this nice face because he is not in this moment interested in testing her in any way right now, you know. And so he just wants her to be like, relax for just a second. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I wanted it to be. And offers her, like, you know, are you hungry? And she thinks to herself, yes, but not for food. And that's the end of her chapter. I do want to mention, too, because I skipped over it, but there's a piece, too. I don't know if it's when she's still on the boat, but she's thinking about her little kill list.
Oh, yeah.
When she's on her way into Bravos, and she's just, like, you know, naming who's left. but then also, you know, in the ones that are gone. And this is, I think, oh no, this is not when she's thinking about like all the places people kept trying to take her. This is a different sort of moment. But and she's just thinking about all the people that are on her list. And I liked it.
Quite a few of them have been crossed up.
Yeah, she's, you know, Joffrey's gone. She's Polliver's taken care of because the Hound took care of Polliver for her. She took care of the Tickler and the Squire. She thinks for a second, you know, I probably should have killed the Hound. That wasn't but what can you do? And then that's it. Right. And then like she gets interrupted, and that's like the end of that thought. But I just wanted to mention that because I forgot to talk about it when we were actually at that section.
So
yeah, that's the end of her chapter.
Yeah, and then we go to Cersei, and we have the funeral for Tywin Lannister, which remember me telling you how there was a theory that he had been poisoned, and that's why he was in the privy.
Right.
That is also the like fact that he stinks so badly. People attribute to the fact that there was something weird introduced to his system that is causing like abnormal decay or some kind of activity. And I really enjoy that theory.
That's nice.
There's really very little like evidence, but the evidence is mentioned, like the supposed evidence is mentioned so many times, like the stink being particularly bad, that I can't help but think there is something to that.
That's an interesting thought, that he was already poisoned by the time that Tyrion got to him. That's kind of funny, because then it, like, if Tyrion had never stopped in the room, Tywin still would have died. And then
maybe
Tyrion wouldn't have been the person who murdered his father. But alas.
Alas and alack.
So yeah, this is, I have to say, there's a moment when Cersei is talking about her gown. And she can't, like, there was no time to get a new one made for her. And she couldn't wear the one that she wore to Joffrey's, and she couldn't wear the one that she wore to Robert's, you know, and it just struck me as just being like, damn, she has been burying folks, hasn't she?
Yeah.
But really, it opens with her and Tommen on the way to the Sept, and she is comparing Tommen to Joffrey at every turn, and it is not a kind comparison. At one point, she just calls him like a fat little kid, but she doesn't use those words. He was inclined to chubbiness, I think is what she said, or plumpness. His
something about the word plump has always amused me a great deal.
I don't like plump for people because it just feels like something you use for food.
I remember finding out that there was a pornographic magazine that featured fatter women, fatter with an asterisk, called Plumpers. And I was delighted. There was something about that just like, I just loved it so much.
Plumpers. Oh my god, that is.
I wonder if that's still a thing. God. I'm gonna look it up.
Don't look it up.
Plumpers magazine.
Oh, if it's a magazine, no, those don't exist anymore.
It may be a website now.
Maybe it's a website now.
Plumpers magazine, adult magazine loaded with naked fat women.
They just think this get right to it, don't they?
It's all vintage. Their last year was 2007.
Aww.
I love this. Oh man. All right. Well, go. I'm looking at these covers of the magazine, and I will say that I appreciate these women are not all hourglass figures in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, okay.
So we've got a lot of body types going on, which I always appreciate.
Nice.
And a couple of fat but small tittied women, which also don't get featured particularly often.
You don't see that a lot.
Yeah.
You sure don't.
Anyway, sorry for everybody who was not interested in Plumpers magazine. I don't know why you wouldn't be, but okay.
Yeah, get your lives together, y'all. But yeah, so there's a lot of comparing Tommen to Joffrey throughout this chapter, and Tommen comes up short every time. Joffrey's crown is too big. he is crying at the at where Tywin is laid out, and she has to remind him that, you know, he's a king and that the whole court is watching. He wants to ride outside of the litter to the funeral, you know, and she's just like, you can't be out in the rain. You're like, you can't show up looking all messy and shit, you know.
Mm-hmm,
She's also like, that fucking shit is sable. You want to be in the rain wearing that?
Something about her like mentioning what it's made out of felt very real for me.
It really did. And she's
This
also,
is Italian leather.
exactly
Calm
the
down,
same.
Mom.
And she's also thinking to herself, Cersei is just like, oh, black isn't even my color. Like, it washes me out. It's just- there's a moment.
I really when she tells him like just something simple like close the window and he does it, she's not like glad
Nope.
he obeyed
Nope.
her. She's like, I can't believe he just did
Joffrey
what
would
I
have
said. What a
argued with
fucking
me.
pussy.
Yeah, you know.
I swear to God, the fact that she sees Joffrey's sadism as like strength is really all you need to know about Cersei.
Yeah. It's she does not seem to have an understanding of what really what is really truly strength, what is really having power, like, and wielding power in a way. When she starts getting later on talking about her, because there's a whole thing too when she gets finally to the fucking septum, where finally at the fucking funeral and Tywin is laid out, she is distressed. Two things in particular. One, that his eyes are closed, because as she recounts, you know, his eyes were like one of like his places of power. She tells a story about somebody making a joke at her father's expense, you know, to his face at a feast or something when she was a girl. And Tywin never has to say a word. He just looks at the guy.
Yep.
And the guy becomes so uncomfortable. He cannot meet his gaze and eventually gets so red-faced, he just gets up and walks away. And Tywin never has to say a fucking word.
Truly pretty good.
I mean, you talk about a fucking flex. That's a flex. And then she's also upset because she's saying that there's almost a hint of a smile on his lips.
Yeah.
And she is basically blaming the Silent Sisters and that they shouldn't have positioned his face that way. I don't know what really to make of that. If it's something that they did, or if that is just his face at a natural resting point, and he spent his entire life making sure he was wearing a scowl. As opposed to like just actively not smiling, he was actively making sure his face was always in like a disapproving, you know, way.
I love the idea that he has the opposite of resting bitch face, and it's just like, oh, this is really inconvenient. Oh God, I really got to practice in a mirror, because when I'm relaxed and unaware, I look like a dopey fucking goon. I like that. All right, I'm going with it. Headcanon.
So she's like and then you add to that the smell, which she remarks on as well when she first goes up to like pay her respects. And Jaime is there, standing vigil, not acknowledging her whatsoever, like a statue, she says, and he's all in his white. And she thinks about how much her father would have hated that. And then we just get a couple of really awkward interactions.
Yeah.
I love there's a moment when she first shows up, because this is a driving to the set. Tommen mentions, like, there's nobody out here. Where everybody at? And she's just like, oh, they're inside hiding from the rain. And she worries about, like, not having as many people supporting her as she would have liked.
Yeah.
And then there's a moment when she gets closer to the sept, and then she sees who's there, and she's like, oh, this is better. You know, I do still have friends. But then she actually spends time with the people who are in there after just being like, oh, good, I still have friends, and being like, fuck all these people.
Yep. Yep. Cersei has a real us versus them thing going on. But the who is us and who is them will change on a dime.
Absolutely. I just never like... No, I, as a reader, just never know what she's thinking until she's like fucking comes out with it. And I'm just like, oh, wait, what? That's what you were thinking about this thing? That's not what I would have thought your thoughts would have been on this, but okay. I guess that's a take. I guess. She is.
There is.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm getting ahead of myself. Nope. I'm waiting.
There's a whole thing that because she's also got a nice little bit of paranoia running through her as well, which I think I need to make sure I mention.
Definitely.
And the fact that Tyrion is out in the world, you know, she's got like her raven. She's sent like word to anybody who will listen to, you know, what she'll pay for his head. And she remembers that the High Septon is someone that Tyrion installed. So she's feeling like, you know, I don't know if I can trust him. How much does he know about me? How much did Tyrion tell him? I guess I'm going to have to keep an eye on him. And he smiles at her, and she's just like, but what kind of smile was it? Was it threatening, full of like unspoken knowledge, or just some vacuous twitch of an old man? I don't know. I got to keep my eye on him. I'm just like, girl. And so then she starts like, people start actually coming up and offering their condolences to her after the service and the singing is finally over. And it's just one, like I said before, just one awkward interaction after the other.
Yes.
Just bang, bang, bang. Like, so, Jesus Christ. I don't even know which one to start with. Who did she meet first? Is it fucking...
I think the first one is Pheles. Is that the very first? Well, okay. So we have some that's like sort of done quickly. So we have a mention of everybody who's here and they're praying, and most people who are like have decorum are pretending there's no smell. But somebody makes a comment. And she like turns around and tries to see who did it, because there's like a giggle, but nobody has a single like expression on their face.
I love that moment.
And then we have the
fucking ask permission to name Lolly's baby after Tywin. If it please you, she ends it with. And Cersei is just like, bitch, you want to name your Lackwit sister's bastard of like a gang rape after my father as an honor to me? But how, though?
Honestly,
and this woman...
I think Cersei can be an unreasonable cunt over a lot, but this for me feels very
not
basic.
Wrong.
Like,
what are you thinking?
Honestly.
What are you thinking? And then she tries to be like, well, I fucking told Tonda that as much. You know, I don't even know why she insisted that I ask you this. I knew that you would say no and that it was inappropriate. And we'll find another name. Don't worry about it.
No,
We're
that's her
definitely gonna find another name.
husband.
It says Phallus flinched back as if she'd been slapped.
Right. And then
you're right. But her husband only stroked his mustache and then says, I told Lady Tonda as much. You're right.
So he tried to warn her, and she was like, no, she'll love it. I swear, I promise.
But it's not Lady Tonda who asked Cersei this.
I thought that Pheles was the mother of Lolly's, but I think she's her sister.
I guess so.
Yeah. Because your Lackwit's sister gets herself raped. That's right. Okay, I had it wrong where she was at. Pheles Stokeworth is married to Sir Balman Birch, so I guess now she's Pheles Birch. Pheles flinched back, but her husband only stroked his blonde mustache with a thumb. I told Lady Tanda as much, so I think he's talking about Pheles' mother.
Gotcha.
I tried to explain to her that was not appropriate.
And then later on, someone else also wants to like name their kid after Tywin, and that when Cersei's like, yeah, that's fine. And then she's just thinking to herself, there's going to be a fucking Tywins running around everywhere.
Yep. I like the idea of that, because I don't, I think of naming trends as being like a real modern thing, but there have been like royals and celebrities forever that people would just want to name. Like that makes sense. I just don't really think about it.
So then she looks up and she sees that Tommen is basically surrounded by Tyrells and is like on her way to try to rescue him from that. And there's just a throwaway line where she's just like, for an instant, the Queen of Thorns was so short, I thought it was another little kid. And then she bumps into her uncle and reminds him that they have a meeting. And he is just... it says he gave a weary nod and begged leave to withdraw. Like he's not here for this whole scene. He's tired and he wants to
Yeah.
go home. And Lancel is also here, and we got a description of him earlier. He had gotten injured and we hadn't seen much of him for a long time. He's out now. He does not look great. All his hair is white now. He's seen some things.
Yeah, he has.
She says Cersei's description of Lancel is the very picture of a man with one foot in the grave. But is he climbing in or climbing out? Like, what are you doing to yourself? Like, she's just, is it me?
No.
It's not me, right? It's her, right? It's definitely her.
Every observation that Cersei makes is immediately followed by, are they going to screw me? Everything has to come down to that. And if they aren't, they probably will anyway. Or if they aren't, they'll be like manipulated by somebody to do it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And if they are, who are their friends? Because it's a guarantee their friends are also part of it. Which just makes this an unending thing.
Yeah.
There's no end of enemies if you feel like everybody related to that person is also part of a plot.
That's exactly right. And so, again, I had to just remind myself that the very first thing she thinks to herself when she enters this room is that I am not without friends. And then proceeds to just destroy everybody in her brain.
Yep.
Of like why they are not really her friend and why they can't really be trusted. So she has a conversation with Lancel, who, again, is not looking great. And she is regretting that she ever even slept with him in the first place. There is something he says about his future. He's supposed to be getting married to a Frey girl, and Cersei says something. What does she say? A Frey girl, and then he tells her that it's cruel. Your Grace knows that I love, and she cuts him off by saying House Lannister. And then wishes him that, I hope that your wife makes you happy.
Yeah.
And then immediately starts to worry about who he might have talked to.
Yeah, because he's getting fucking pious and talking about atoning for sins and stuff, and she's like, oh, don't like that.
Yeah, she's worried about, like, what kind of sins are you fucking confessing to? And then what happens if you get married and you're laying in bed with your fucking Frey wife? What are you going to start talking to her about, Immediately, Lancel goes from just like a cousin I used to fuck to somebody who I wasn't thinking that much about to how are all the ways this man can hurt me? All the ways that he could be a danger to me. And she leaves him with being like atonement is best achieved through silent prayer.
Swear to God, she thinks she's really being so subtle.
She really does. So then she has an encounter with Marjorie, who gives her a great big hug like a sister, which Cersei thinks is presumptuous. But I'm gonna let that slide because this is not the time or place to deal with that. And I think that's when some other lady is like, we're going to name our kid a Tywin or whatever the fuck. And then another woman who I don't really know, her name is Lady Merryweather.
Yeah, she's a new player.
She shows up, right? And she has sultry, mirrish tones, which I was like, all right. And she tells Cersei, the first thing she tells Cersei is exactly what the fuck Cersei wants to hear, which I'm like, finally somebody at this fucking funeral understands who and what they are dealing with.
Yeah.
She tells Cersei, I let all my people know across the water about your fucking piece of shit brother. So don't worry about that. If he pops up anywhere, my people are going to be on it, which is exactly what you tell Cersei. That's the first thing you say to her, because she is like, I am so happy that we are talking right now. And starts talking about how beautiful this woman was, and not in a way that feels like she is threatened by her at all at first. And she's admiring how beautiful she is, and she says she even smells of sin like some exotic lotus. And then after that moment, Cersei thinks to herself, this one is ambitious. And her man is proud, but they don't have no money. So she's already like thinking about like, how can I possibly use this woman, right, to my ends, and what might be the way to get to her. And money and power might be the things that work with her because she's ambitious, she has ideas, and it doesn't look like her man has a lot of money to support the lifestyle that she clearly would like to be living. And then she tells her that, you know, they're going to be great friends and that she definitely wants to speak to her again, calls her by her first name. And then after that, it's all of Highgarden all around her. And that's when things start to get a little dicey.
They sure do. Let's go to the tape, Cotton. This bitch just like sets out to offend everybody. And really, once again, thinks that she's being like politically astute.
Yep.
And it is wild to watch because she keeps talking about how she is her father's daughter, but people can tell her that her father is the one who organized a thing, and that is of no consequence in her like mental calculations as to whether it's a good idea at all.
Right.
It doesn't factor. Which is a weird way to go of be like, I'm going to simultaneously kind of like have a hero worship of this person and also give their opinion no weight. I don't get how you do that. Like, that's a weird way to be.
It's a very weird thing where she both like, you know, like you said, worships her father, but also thinks that she could be a better Tywin than Tywin was. Somebody is like, your father was a great man, we'll never see his like again. And she thinks to herself, you're looking at his like right the fuck now, dummy. Like, that's what she thinks. Oh my God. And is like offended.
I'm his daughter standing right here. And I'm like,
God.
Girl, he knows.
But she also says to herself, but you know what? I need the strength of Highgarden, so I'm going to be chill. Because, you know, she's so politically astute here. She's like, really like, of course you could chill. It's literally your only option in this moment. It doesn't take a great mind to understand that in this moment you should probably chill. But she's given herself a lot of credit.
And also being like, well, he's Highgarden, I've got to behave myself. But then turns around and like undoes agreements that her father basically like signed contracts on with Highgarden a second later. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
She got no logic.
Tyrell is trying to be like, if you need me,
I didn't want to bring this up, but your dad owes me some money.
Right? But yeah, he's trying to be like, trying to be subtle, which he's not actually doing a great job of either, if I'm going to be fair. And just is like, you know, if you need my assistance for anything, I'm totally right here. And she's all proud of herself. Oh, he wants to be the hand. Yeah, he does, because it's already been discussed. But she's super proud of herself because she feels like, oh, I see right through this. And so her response to him is, surely they need you at home, though, right? And so then he replies back, no, home's covered. I got the boys. It's all covered. You don't have to worry about that. They can spare me. It's in good hands. And this little game like goes back and forth for a minute until she says the queen's smile had frozen so hard she feared her teeth might crack. And finally, she just is like, no, that job's filled.
There must have been some sort of misunderstanding. Yeah.
I'm so sorry, but I've already asked somebody else to be our new, like, in this position, it's a master of coin. And, because he's trying to get someone named Garth to be master of coin. I think, is that one of his sons?
I think it might be a brother?
Or his uncle. Lord Tywin often said, my Uncle Garth has agreed to serve as master of coin, as your Lord Father wished.
Okay, right. Gotcha.
And then he wants, Garth is going to come and bring 2 sons, and Tywin has said something about finding places for them, maybe the city watch. So, like, all this stuff has been laid out between Tywin and Tyrell's without Cersei's knowledge, really. And they are expecting her to sort of hold up his deals. And her thought is, the Tyrells really think I'm just going to serve up everything to them on a fucking platter, and calls it arrogance, and decides in that moment, yeah, no, we're not doing any of that. So yeah, she lies that she's already asked this Giles Rosby person to be master of coin, which she has not done. We find out later. They are shocked. The coffer. That made me laugh.
That is. And later on, there's a scene where she tells him, and he coughs a bunch. And the audiobook narrator, he really goes to town, like imitating a real cough as he's trying to talk. And my God, it's infuriating. It's so annoying. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, I understand why people are like, I couldn't handle working with him.
Yeah.
It would drive me fucking nuts. No. Oh,
and it's
man.
also a throwaway line that he coughs into like a red handkerchief because he's coughing up blood.
Yeah.
Which is like not a great sign. Of someone that you want to like bring into your small council. That shit sounds like it might be something contagious, and maybe you don't want to bring him around, but whatever.
There's that. And then also when she like has a conversation, I think it's when she talks to Kevin Lannister later, and she says something about how his horses are better dressed than half the high council. If a man like that doesn't know how to make money, I don't know who does.
Right.
And it's just like such a weird metric of like somebody who spends that much on a thing as unnecessary as their horses must be very responsible with money. And so that's a wild conclusion to go to.
That's what we do though. Like we treat like all the time. We're always like, well, this guy must be really good because he's a billionaire, right? So that automatically means he's like super smart, knows how to make money, and da 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 da. Despite having we treat someone like Musk, right, who we know inherited all his money. We know that. We all know it, and we still hold him up like some genius businessman.
Even though there was like a screenshot recently of a tweet where he tries to ask somebody to like produce any proof of the emerald mine thing, and a person like literally quoted an interview with his own father that was like, it was so, like he just really tried to act like, yeah, all right, try and say that. And I'm like, dude, yeah, because he really thinks like he's untouchable. So he has a very Cersei energy, honestly, in a lot of ways, where it's just like, if I will something hard enough to not be, then it just won't, because everybody knows not to cross me. It's weird.
Yeah, I guess a limitless amount of money to do whatever you want to do with will have that effect on a person, huh? So this is when she has to tell them about the coffer, and then the grandmom shows up, Queen of Thorns shows up, and we get just a really delightful moment where she actually says that it's better to have this coffer than this Garth person who's on his way, because as bad as the coffer is, this Garth person is flatulent, and could not be you wouldn't want to share a small space with him. And then she says, I do abhor foul smells, wrinkles up her face, and just is like, and I caught a whiff of something really unpleasant in the sept. Maybe you smelled it too? And so she has to be like, a scent, you say? No, I didn't notice anything. And she's like, no, not a scent, more like a stink.
She really just decides to fucking go for it, and I applaud her.
Oh my god. Oh god. And so there's some back and forth.
More like a stink. And then Cersei, well, maybe you're just missing the beautiful roses from Highgarden. You probably do miss it because you've been here such a long time. We really shouldn't have kept you. Feel free to leave whenever.
She comes back. Well, I really would like to leave. I do miss the beautiful smells of home. However, I cannot leave until my sweet girl is married to your precious little boy. And then the fucking Tyrell pops up. He's like, yeah, that's right. The wedding. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that too. As a matter of fact, me and your father were talking about a date. We should... like trying to like right the ship, trying to get things back on track.
He wants so bad to like be in control of things, and my guy, you're just gonna have to wait for her to die.
Yeah.
Because the only way you're going to be able to have control over anything is if they don't have a smarter person to compare you to.
Absolutely.
And right now, she completely outshines you every moment, and it's not going to happen. Nobody's going to take you seriously if she's standing next to you, because she will command the whole room. I love her so much.
It ends with fucking Lady Olenna saying, with, again, another sniff, because, like, she can barely take the smell of where she is. She's like, come along, let her grace get on with her grief.
Long, significant pause.
It's so good. Cersei says, I will see you dead, old woman. It's just really, really, really well done. I enjoyed every second of this. But so eventually,
I forgot that she immediately goes, "I will see you dead."
Yeah,
that is such a fucking amazing jump. So Cersei, good. You really need medication, sweetie.
Oh God
damn,
it's so good. So yeah, eventually they like sort of wrap up. She asked for this Giles guy to like join her on the way home, so she can tell him, by the way, I just told everybody that you're going to be the new master of coin, and I need you to act like I asked you to do this yesterday. And this is when he asked her who's going to be your hand, and she says it's going to be my uncle. And and I'm like, all right, yeah, that all feels right. Yeah, Uncle Kevin is a reasonable choice for her to make. She gets back to the Red Keep. There's a moment with Qyburn who fucking shows up.
This man is
looking a mess, and she's just like, I need you to get. Next time you come see me, you need to be better than this. You're looking all raggedy and tattered, and no, this is no good. But he shows up with a update of a couple of things, and one of the things he's been looking into is like what happened with Tyrion. How did he get away? And at first he comes back and he's just giving her all this information that she's already gotten. We already know the man's name. We already know that he was a jailer down there. We know all this. This is not new information. But what he has discovered is that there was a little hidey hole in this man's like bedroom, his cell. And they find a coin that is not just foreign currency, but something that's really old. And it turns out that it is a coin that dates from before the conquest, and that it is a sigil of what was House Gardner, which of course became Highgarden.
Correct.
So now her wheels are spinning. Were the Tyrells part of this? Did they pay him to, which, like, personally, if I'm going to pay somebody to do a thing, especially a thing like this, I'm not using the coins that like tie directly back to my fucking house.
I have to agree.
Right?
That doesn't feel smart. This is like, that we found your scarf around the murder victim's neck. Yeah, I definitely used my own scarf to kill. Yeah, good call.
I fucking paid for an assassin with a check. Who's doing that? Nobody's doing that.
Yep.
So this feels like nonsense, a misdirect, or doesn't have anything to do with anything, and he has this coin from some other thing. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's even really found there. I don't know. Like, is this guy full of shit? Did he really find it there? If it was found there, who placed it there? But she's thinking, first she says, was it some ploy? And then she's like, could he really have been plotting with my brother all this time? Like, is that possible? Starts spinning a little bit herself. Doesn't really know which way to go with this. And then they start talking about the mountain. And he is convinced that it was this poison that they had already talked about. And they had sort of discounted this particular poison because Pycelle had said that poison kills instantly. Like, as soon as it gets to your heart, like it's you're done so. And Qyburn is like, well, I think it's been altered.
Yeah, he's like, well, as soon as it gets to his heart, it might kill him, but
Right?
for some reason, it's not getting there.
Yeah, and it's like done on purpose to draw out the suffering and make the dying like that much more agonizing. And long story short, he wants permission to keep Gregor alive so that he can investigate a little bit more what's going on with this poison. And this is when she finally is like, hey, what exactly happened? Why did you get kicked out again? Did we talk about that yet? He tells her with like a straight face, and as far as I can tell, not like an ounce of regret or recrimination or anything. He's just like, they're a bunch of hypocrites. They think it's fine to cut up dead bodies to try to find, the mysteries of life. Well, so I fucking opened up a couple of living people to get the mysteries of death. I feel like it's all fair.
Yep. He seems genuinely to be like, I really don't understand the difference between what I did and what they do. And I find it extremely weird how upset they got over it.
Right? Like, as a rational person, right? A reasonable person hears the words come out of that mouth, said the way they are said, with the expression of which they are expressed. And a reasonable person says, this is not somebody that I want around me. This person is not okay. Cersei says, meh, go ahead, take him. It's fine.
It says Cersei was intrigued. This is why she thought Joffrey was going to be such a good king. Because shit like this, it just doesn't fucking register for her. It's not a problem. Why would it be a problem? It's only a problem for pussies who don't understand that you just gotta do shit sometimes. And the fact that maybe you don't gotta do it isn't really the part that we worry about, because they definitely did gotta do it for reasons of, I wanted to.
And it's all satisfactory.
That's all we needed.
Right? So she basically, this ends with her just being like, when you're done, no, I'm going to need that head because I low-key promised it to Doran. So, just don't let me forget about that part. So she's like, this is when she's just like, I'm going to make sure that like your project gets funded. I'm going to need you to fucking tidy up your whole appearance and obviously keep the shit to yourself, please. Mm-hmm. And so then finally she's like resting. She's trying to figure out what the fuck's going on. She's all over the place. Gold from the Reach. Why would a jailer from King's Landing have it unless he were paid? But that doesn't make sense. And then she's like, was it Pycelle? Maybe he's involved, and then remembering that this High Septon was Tyrion's creature, she calls it, and just like, start to
then
think
she's
maybe,
like, oh, well, Tyrion didn't like Pycelle, but maybe he did, and it was all a smoke screen.
Right.
And threw him into the black cells because he was meeting with this dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
she's even thinking that the way her father was laid out is almost evidence that the Septon can't be trusted, because this body was in their care all this time, and now he stinks and he's got the smile when his eyes are closed, and she's just like, I can't trust it. And so up until this point,
I would love to have people who are getting evaluated like this hear what's happening in her head and realize like how small the transgression has to be, or the perceived transgression, before she jumps to a conclusion.
The slightest thing.
That would really be some wild shit.
Like she goes like 0 to 60, in like 1.2 seconds. It's wild. And so all of this chapter has been a lot already. It's just been a lot of her doing some things that I'm just like, I don't know about these choices you're making, young lady. And the way people are responding to her and these little jabs back and forth. And it's all been like very entertaining, and tension building and all that stuff, right? So it's time for Uncle Kevin to show up. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't remember from the show at all how this goes with Kevin specifically. So that's just my bad. I'm sorry. Right?
I don't recall it going anyway. I'm not sure.
Don't remember at all.
Scene was anything.
For me, this was all super new. And when I tell you, I thought that Uncle Kevin's conversation was going to be probably the least interesting part of this chapter. Because I just thought he was going to be the Kevin that was Kevin for Tywin. And he was just going to be like that dude that I've known for a couple books now, a little bit. You know, I don't know him well, but I know him a little bit, you know. I cannot express to you guys adequately how unprepared I was for Kevin showing up with the chopper. He just came in this room and was just like, just shooting. I was not fucking ready. I was not, like, this motherfucker sat down and told her to her face all the things that we have been saying behind her back on this podcast. Like, he just...
I love the idea that this is behind her back.
I wish I could have seen my face. And the thing is, too, is she is also expecting the same Uncle Kevin, right? That has been her father's, like, number two, obedient, supportive. You know what I mean? She just thinks he's going to play that role for her the way he played it for her father. It never occurs to her.
Because why wouldn't he? Because she's exactly like her father, of course.
Y'all. Yeah, as a matter of fact, I might let you just do the summary for how this goes, because I was left speechless. I was speechless.
All right, so let's begin. They have dinner, and she tells him to start off their little chit chat. All right, well, the time has come for the aid of all good men to come to the party. But basically, like, she's saying, I will have to rely on you the way that father once relied on you. He doesn't interrupt, but it feels like he's doing a very, let's get to the fucking point. And he says, you need a hand, and Jamie has refused you. And she tries to be like, I shouldn't have asked him. I was just so upset. Tommen needs a more seasoned man, someone older. And he says, Mace Tyrell is older. I really thought this was interesting because she's like, absolutely fucking not. And he immediately is like, all right, fair. You shouldn't do that. And I was like, oh, okay. Because I thought you were about to like, argue on his behalf. But he's not even really doing that. And then he says, but you also don't want to piss him off. And he shouldn't have come to you the way that he did, like, at the Sept right after the funeral. But the way you handled that was no good either. And she gets very salty that he is reproaching her, you know, the reasons she gave for who she picked. As for being hand, you're the one who started all of these, like, agreements, then maybe you should be the one to help finish them. He says, you ask a lot. I'm really tired. I don't really want to be doing this anymore. I got a wife. My son's about to get married. Yeah. I have, like, a whole, like, area that I am supposed to be, like, guardian of that got burned and sacked, and I got to rebuild all this stuff. I'd love to just go home. And she says, well, but the realm needs you. And she's genuinely starting to be like, what the fuck? Because she didn't think she was going to have to talk him into it. Right. So she's already irritated. Clearly, she expected it to be a matter of course that he's going to agree to this. Then they will get on to the, like, what do we do's? And she's not even going to get to that part tonight, because first it has to be fucking argue that he's even going to stay. Yep. And then, I will remain and serve his grace. And she starts to just say, very good. And he goes on, so long as you name me regent as well as hand and take yourself back to Casterly Rock. The way my face dropped, y'all. Fucking hell. Yep. She said, and it's interesting because, like, we haven't seen a ton of Kevin. The most we have really gotten of him is pretty recent, from when he is talking to Tyrion when Tyrion's in prison for supposedly poisoning Joffrey. So we haven't gotten a great feel for him, but in those scenes he seemed, despite being a bit of, you know, worshipful of a man who's kind of a monster, he seemed to be pretty reasonable and to use his head. He wasn't somebody who just believed whatever the gossip was. He was, like, at first trying to give Tyrion the benefit of the doubt and hear him out and stuff. So I feel like I should have been more prepared for the fact that he was going to have seen through some of Cersei's bullshit, but I also was completely taken by surprise at this whole conversation and like the direction it went.
It's not that I underestimated Kevin because I thought he was like not smart, right? I trusted Tywin enough to understand that Tywin would not suffer a fool that close to him for that long, right?
Sure.
So just based on the strength of that, I knew I gave Kevin like credit, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess what I didn't think he had in him, I guess I just really misunderstood. I made the same mistake Cersei made, quite frankly. I mistook his loyalty to Tywin as being not just about who Tywin was as a person and a leader and a you know, tactician and all that shit, but just out of like straight up house family loyalty. Like that's all it was, right? I didn't really give him credit for it being about him really respecting Tywin and knowing Tywin was about that shit, you know?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And understanding that how his brother operated and that his brother got results and all that kind of shit. I was more like, well, yeah, he's riding because it's Lannisters and Lannisters, and that's what we do. We ride. And Cersei made the very same mistake.
It's also interesting that she makes this mistake, like, I thought he would just be loyal to the family, but one could argue that by not supporting her, that is showing loyalty to the family.
Well, because she's a mess.
He knows she's bad at this, and he doesn't want their whole reputation to get fucking ruined.
Yep.
So he's just like, I'm not going to just allow a maniac with bad judgment to take the reins after everything my brother put into place and undo all of that.
Yep.
But because she is such an absolutist about loyalty, she cannot see his later suggestions of choosing Mace's bannerman as reasoned, thoughtful, best for the realm overall choices. She simply sees it as, those are Mace's guys. You're a traitor.
And that these are plans that Tywin had laid down, right? And when we were talking about earlier about how she just doesn't have any regard for the moves that her father was already making and understanding, like we talked about earlier, like she worships her father, thinks that he was brilliant, and yet the first opportunity she gets, she's going to literally undo all the shit that he was working on. And one of the things that Kevin is like, she says something like, my place is here. And he's like, your father didn't think so. and he was like, and he talked about not only of you moving, but that you are also supposed to be getting married, right? We're supposed to be getting you a new husband. And she starts to get like really pissy now. And she's like, yeah, he talked about it, but I told him I didn't want to do that. And so her uncle says, I love it, says her uncle was unmoved. But he's like, all right, if you don't want to get married, I'm not going to force you to get married. But the other fucking thing, you need to go home. You're Lady of Castle Rock now. That's where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
And she is fucking exploding inside.
Yep.
I'm the Queen Regent. My place with my son. Your father thought not. My father is dead. To my grief and the woe of all the realm. And then he's just like, you need to open your fucking eyes. The kingdom is a mess. Tywin might have been able to save it, but right now, and then she just, I'm going to fix it. I'm going to set matters right. And then she tries to plead again. If you help me, if you serve me faithfully, like you serve my father. And he says, you are not your father, to her face, in front of all the gods and everything.
Yep.
And says, and Tywin always regarded Jaime as his rightful heir. And that is not what she wants to hear either. And she
again, it's remarkable because she gives her father so much credit for competence, but he didn't believe she was capable, and her belief in his judgment ends there.
Yep.
It's really kind of funny. Like, well, he was right about literally everything ever in his life, except specifically for me and the fact that I'm not good for the job, which
And-
is the only thing he was ever wrong about.
And you know what? In her defense, and I hate to even like be in her defense, but she is convinced, and I understand why she would think this. You know, it makes sense that she would think this. She really thinks that no one takes her seriously and no one understands how brilliant she is because she's a woman. She thinks that's the only thing, right? She doesn't take any of the, not the people who are like often critiquing her to her face, but the ones that do and have, she doesn't take those criticisms to be valid of anything. She thinks they are only because she's a woman. If I were a man and I behaved exactly the way that I behave, they would all respect me and fear me. You know, I'm almost 9 times out of 10 going to be like, yep, fucking misogyny and a patriarchy. As much as it hurts me to say, but I don't think that's actually what's happening here. I mean, granted, it might be sprinkled, like, you know, there's some misogyny sprinkled on all these interactions with her with these men, you know, because that's just everywhere, you know. But it is not the crux of it. It is not really the heart of what's going on and why she is just so bad and not taken seriously. It is not just because she is a woman. It is because she is fucking bonkers. And she makes no sense. And she has terrible judgment.
And I really, like, I want to mention, I have not watched any of the new season, but...
Oh,
you know who I'm
yes,
thinking
yes.
of,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Are you purposely
Like,
not saying it?
I guess I'm not purposely not saying it. It's more like there is like the particular character that this lines up with, but for those who aren't aware, overall, there is a very Succession sort of vibe to Tywin and the like viciousness of his personality and the variety of children that he has wound up with who are disappointments in various ways, and how we watch him seemingly sort of sound them all out to sea, except he has his prejudgments about Tyrion, of course, so he can't see past that, which is not really a thing in the Success. I feel like he accurately judges his children for the most part. There's nobody that he's particularly bigoted against that he should give more of a chance. All his kids suck pretty much. But that's sort of, I just keep thinking of Tywin as being like desperately hopeful that one of his children would eventually be able to take the reins, and watching how each of them is just a fucking joke and can't, like, either isn't up to it or doesn't care, like Jaime, and just like was basically my sister's pussy priority, and that was all he cared about, was like putting himself in a position where he could be around her and still fuck her. And I still really can't decide whether Tywin knew about that, but
I need you to fucking
anyway.
This season. I need you to. I know you guys are like, you know, enjoying a lot more lighter fare right now, and I get it. The world's terrible, but I need you to fucking get with the season, ma'am. I really need that to happen.
I'm so sorry.
I mean, it's your fault.
I'm
even watching this fucking show in the first place, and then like, how dare you? Not even like. But so yeah, so all right, so after he says a thing about Jaime. She's just like, well, Jaime's taking vows or he's off the table. But that's not enough. She also has to, Jaime never thinks, he laughs at everything and everyone and says whatever comes into his head. He is a handsome fool. She has no self-awareness. No self-awareness. Nope. And her uncle was like, and yet, he was your very first choice. How about that? Oh, my God.
Brutal.
So...
brutal.
And then she goes back to her whole, well, you can't hold that against me. I was like grieving when I asked him that, and you can't hold that. I was sick with grief. And her uncle was like, which is probably why you should go to Casterly Rock and leave the king with those who do know what to do and those who do know how to think.
Yep.
It is just a fucking punch right in the throat. Just.
And then.
My God. He didn't. I mean, once he starts unloading, it is. I was like reading through my fingers. You know how you cover your face because you can't watch something on TV. That's how I was reading these last like these four like paragraphs. She says, "The king is my son. And her uncle says, and from what I saw of Joffrey, you are as unfit a mother as you are a ruler. Woo!
Go! Finish him.
I was so not ready and aware that this is where we were going. So he says that. She throws her glass of wine in his face. He stands up. I love this line. Sir Kevin rose with a ponderous dignity and begs her pardon to leave. And she's still like enraged. And she's like, who do you think you are to like even come to me with fucking terms? You're nothing more than one of my father's household knights, which is like her big insult to him. And he's like, yeah, you know what? You're right. I don't have any lands, but I got some monies and some coins. And like, unlike your father, my own father didn't forget any of his children when he died. And also your dad, he knew how to take care of people who gave him good service. As a matter of fact, since you brought it up, I feed about 200 knights, and I can double that number if I have to. So you're going to want to chill with the way you talk to me. It is amazing. It is just amazing. And tells her, don't fucking play in my face, and you're not going to want to make me an enemy. You're going to want to fucking smarten up. And she's, are you threatening me? I'm counseling you. Jesus fucking Christ. Yeah. So those are his demands. You are going to yield the regency. You're going to name me Castellan for Casterly Rock.
No, Castellan. Is it Castellan?
Yeah, he says name. I
thought that Castellan was like the guy who runs the household.
That's what I thought too. But he says, if you will not yield the regency to me, name me your Castellan for Casterly Rock, and also make either this Rowan guy or Randall Tarley hand of the king. So he's like, if you won't give up the regency, right, then you're going to name me Castellan for Casterly Rock. And I didn't know what Castellan meant, and I took it the way you did. I thought that was a very generic sort of person who runs the house or runs the, some part of your household. GM.
Yeah.
But maybe it's a little bit higher than that.
I didn't even notice that, but yeah, you're right. Okay. I'm interested to know if anybody has further information on what that would mean. But
and he's trying to counsel her again. Like, she doesn't want to hear any of this, but he's like, really, no. Listen, this guy, Rowan, is sensible. He's well-liked. He's smart. Tarley is the finest soldier in the realm, which I didn't realize that. But okay, because that's Sam's dad.
Yeah.
And you know how I feel about him. I don't like him at all.
Absolutely not.
But but hearing this description of him and understanding his reputation, that helps me with Sam's relationship. That helps put that in a context for me,
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I really appreciated what a fine reputation Randall Tarley had. And then when I think about having Sam as a son of a man like this, we had talked about this before, and we knew how seriously Randall took like that sort of masculine sort of performance. But now hearing like his name be bandied about in like the highest rooms of honor and privilege in their world, it really does be like, oh, yeah, oh, okay. No, he's not just some guy who's good. He's like the guy. So that I found that to be helpful.
Oh God, here's the moment when he mentions them and Tyrell Bannerman. Is he bought? How has he taken Tyrell gold to betray her? Girl, how fast was that?
She can't, like, not only was it so fast, but also like in her mind, he's just said all this fucking shit to her. So she's spinning trying to reconcile who she thought she was about to have a meeting with and who actually showed up. Right. Mm-hmm. So she's trying to like, on some level, she's trying to make sense of why this uncle who has never really talked to her like this would suddenly be talking to her like this. And he mentions putting these particular people in a position of power. And it's like her brain seizes on that because that's going to help explain why he's acting like this to me. You know, why is he talking to me like this all of a sudden? Oh, maybe he's been bought. Yeah. That's the ticket.
It can't be that I'm inadequate or that my father left explicit instructions or anything like. No. It's just the fact that he's bad man. He traitor.
Yep. And it ends with him just literally shrugging and is like, I gave you my counsel. You could take it or not. You can fucking make Moon Boy your hand for all I give a fuck. My brother is dead, woman. I felt that in my spirit.
That woman.
My brother is dead, woman was like cutting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go take him home. And she's like, you would abandon your king when he needs you most. You would abandon Tommen. And he says, Tommen has his mother. And I love this, Sir Kevin's green eyes, because we had that whole bit about the green eyes of Tywin and hers, and, you know, this whole thing with the Lannisters and their green eyes. And so much had been made in her memory when she was remembering her father and how he could turn somebody cold with a look. And it just says, you know, his green eyes met her own, unblinking, with the last little drop of wine on his chin. And he goes, huh. And I think his father, too, which was like, you were saying earlier you were unsure about whether Tywin ever actually understood about Cersei and Jaime, like if he really, really knew or not.
Mm-hmm.
I, you know, don't know the answer to that. But hearing that come from her Uncle Kevin to her face.
To her face.
I can't get over how much to her face this all was,
yep.
too. I feel like I've said it like 7 times, but it's because I cannot get over it. Yeah, Tommen has his mother and his father too, I think. Bitch. When I turned the page and it was the end of the chapter, I was so mad. I was so mad. Because I need to know, how did she pick her jaw up off the floor? Because there's no next sentence of like what her reaction is or what her face looked like or anything. It just ends with him saying, you know, his father too, I think. And it's done. I need to know, how long was her face on the floor? Who came in and helped her pick it up? You know, who?
So do you see why I was a little disappointed with the show's version of Cersei?
I do. It's still early, but
because the whole like fandom around the show loves to hold Cersei up as this like badass queen, and people kept trying to like compare Rhaenyra with Cersei from I keep wanting to call it Fire and Blood House the Dragon, as if that were a compliment. And I just kept being like, guys, that's not a flattering comparison. I know you like think it is, but they just made her so, I won't even say they made her that much more competent in the show exactly, but her incompetence always feels like it's just because somebody was a step ahead of her. And it's not because she has such weird paranoid judgment about things. Do you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah. She, and I think what happens, I don't know how the show would have done a better job of portraying it. I mean, I'm sure they could have, but I just think that there are some things that you lose when you go from being in the POV in the books.
Yeah.
To just trying to like, you know, it's very hard. I don't know how they would have, because they would have had to make all of this internal monologue external in some fashion in order for us to get it, right? We would have had to have her having either a long conversation with someone else in the room or just have her in the room talking out loud to herself, I guess, you know, much more than we get in the show. And we know the show was like, they didn't really, those weren't the moments they were interested in showing us. We found out. Right?
No, they were not.
So yeah, I'm not exactly sure how they would have been able. I mean, I'm sure people have ideas and they're probably good ideas, but as I'm sitting on the spot here trying to imagine, like, how do you portray the absolute manic nature of the way her brain is working and how quickly it jumps, you know, to these extremes, you know. She is a woman of extremes. She just goes from,
Definitely.
1 second you're a potential ally or a known ally to being a traitor, then maybe back to being an ally again, depending on how you move that morning. She's just unhinged in these books in a way that she was not on the show, or it didn't come across on the show.
Yeah.
And so when she has those big moments of triumph on the show, those moments that we all really love to see, where we're just like, yes, queen, because we want to see her win. Those moments sort of overshadow the sort of incompetence that she moves with from day to day. You know what I mean? Because the incompetence is just sort of quiet. And the moments that she wins are so big and are such spectacles that becomes our takeaway. But yeah, Cersei in the books.
She is just a really fun character to be in their head, though. Like, she's so infuriating because she is all over the place. But it's also fascinating. Because you're just like, God, she's so unpredictable because her way of thinking is really consistent, but the conclusions she draws are always so wild that I wouldn't have thought of them. So they take me by surprise over and over again.
When I saw it was a Cersei chapter, I was like, oh, good.
Yay.
But I had no idea how good it was going to be, though. I really didn't.
Talking about this behind her back on the podcast, and I like the idea that she hears you go, oh, it's good, it's a Cersei chapter, and draws the realist wrong conclusions as to why you're excited about that, because she just doesn't understand anybody's feelings about her.
She really doesn't.
She gets it wrong
she
a
really
lot.
Doesn't. She does not have what a weird, wild character she is. And the thing is, too, is like, I don't want to spend like a lot of time, especially because we're running late. I mean, not running late, but we're running long. But like thinking about like when you had the little segue into Succession and the sort of parallels there, the real like intricacies of why the whys of Jaime and Cersei and Tyrion, the damage, they're so damaged. They are fundamentally broken. And on the surface, you feel like, oh, well, it's easy to peg why to this, and that, But then you like deal, especially like a Tyrion, you feel like, oh, well, it's very clear why he's the way he is. Look how his family treated him and how much they hated him, and he's got this dwarfism and da-da-da. But it's so much more than that, Their father just really fucked them.
Yeah, he did.
Just fucked them up good. And did it in such a way that even when they think they understand themselves, they really don't.
Nah.
Even Tyrion, who really feels like he knows himself as well as anybody could know themselves, right? Doesn't.
Nah, not really.
But I don't know if he would ever admit that. I feel like he really thinks he gets what he's doing. He gets who he is. Cersei really does think she gets who she is and what she is. Jaime too. But they don't.
I think Jaime's finally realizing that he doesn't get it. That's been part of his journey, is like, wait a second.
Yeah, you know what?
I thought I knew, but this isn't right.
I think that that's fair. I think that's fair to give that a little bit of credit to Jaime, because Jaime had to, and it's not that he's the only one that went through like horrific like trauma. Tyrion has been through his things, and Cersei even, to be fair, as a young girl and being married off to somebody who didn't treat her well and didn't really love her, and the sort of inadequacies that she feels about herself and being a girl, and deciding that the sort of feelings of inadequacy, instead of owning that that's how she really feels about herself, she decided to externalize them.
Yeah.
And be like, I don't feel that way about myself. That's just what everybody thinks of me. So it's a them problem, not a me problem. But Jaime's trauma, I guess maybe because it was so recent, like it just fucking happened. He just lost his hand. So we get to see him in real time, kind of trying to figure out who he is, because who he thought he was stripped away from him so violently. So he's being forced to reckon with himself in a way that his siblings haven't necessarily had to do just yet in that way.
I think
if
it's
that makes
like
sense at all.
I think it's just too like, even if you have been forced to reckon with it, you maybe just don't come to the right conclusion sometimes.
True. I mean, I'm not sure. I'm not yet convinced for Book Jamie if he's coming to the right conclusion about himself.
That's fair. I think that his progress forward with Brienne speaks a lot to that, but
it definitely suggests that he is on that path, but I can't say yet where I know where. I can't yet say that I think I know where this path leads.
Gotcha.
It looks promising, but for me in the books, it's still, it's better than where he was, but it's still, very up in the air about where it's going. Because when I see Jamie around anyone other than Brienne, when I see him with Cersei, a lot of times it's in my mind, there's a little bit of a regression.
There's definitely a little bit, but it does seem like she tried to get him to be hand, and he literally was like, "Are you fucking high? Of course I'm not doing that." Which I don't know if who he had been would have rejected her so completely and so immediately. I don't know. There's a feeling for me of like, he wouldn't have wanted to do it, but because she was the one asking, he may have considered it.
Oh, interesting.
And this felt much more like, bitch, no.
That's very interesting.
You know what I mean?
I wonder if other people, I can't imagine any iteration of Jamie that I've met that says yes to being hand. It just doesn't seem like anything that he would ever have been interested in doing, even coming from her.
I mean, I don't
just like
even
a
disagree
flat out
with
no
you
every time.
I think that he would have said no both times, but I think that there seemed to me to be like a frustration with her for asking that I don't know he would have had. And I think part of it is also just the fact that I'm looking at how she mentions that he hasn't really been coming to see her. And it just feels like he is generally seeming to pull away, which I can't help but interpret as growth.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? Just like the very fact that he's like, I can't be around her right now. No, thank you.
He doesn't even speak to her.
Like, that's something.
At the father's at the sept, he doesn't even speak to her. And I actually meant to ask you about this when we were reading it. I didn't know how much of that was, I am like standing vigil at my father's thing, and this is my role is to not speak. I'm just standing here, and that's why I'm not having anything with you. Or if it was him choosing not to have anything interaction with her whatsoever. And I don't know if there's an answer for that. I really don't know if that's something you would know.
I don't know.
Or because I didn't know how to read it exactly. Because she just says, standing there like a statue, all dressed in white. Father would, always hated him when he was in white. And I was just like, oh, is he pulling is this like a Buckingham Palace situation where he's not allowed to talk while he's standing here, or is he just ignoring her because he doesn't want to have, doesn't want to deal with her right now? I didn't know which way to take it.
There's a couple of things that I wanted to mention before we totally wrap up. One of them is, so we have this whole thing with the guard that she, gets the news about him and his weird, he had no family, he had no friends, he never went out with anybody. The straw that was like, yeah. So do you have any ideas about this?
I really do. You know what I wanted to ask you too? Is Varys missing? Varys is gone, right?
Yeah.
You guys have to forgive me.
Okay, so the guard that's missing
is Varys, right?
Was Varys. Yeah. He came and visited Ned in the Black Cells. In costume.
That's right.
I don't know if you remember that. And Ned didn't recognize him and is genuinely shocked and is like, God damn, he does not look like himself at all.
Right. And they're talking about this jailer and how he's been here since forever, even when the old king was here, that he comes and goes as he pleases, and that the other jailers don't particularly like him. And And that's really all they know about him. He doesn't they go like searching, find out like, is he like a whoremonger? Is he like a drunk? They can't find anything about him. And then they talk about Varys being missing, but it's super casual when it's like half a sentence.
Yeah. Yep. So it may give you some food for thought about that coin that was so conveniently left in such a incriminating place. So that's that thing. Also, I want to come up with like a little jingle that we can play whenever I'm about to read you information from the notes that
like an Austin's Corner kind of thing, like a little segment.
Yeah, exactly. Like Austin's Info Hour. Something like that. But Austin sent us some info about Bravos, which I thought was really something you would appreciate. Bravos is the only one of the free cities that was not founded by Valyria. It was founded after a rebellion on one of Valeria's slave ship fleets. The slaves rose up, took control of the ships, sailed to the furthest corner of Essos, and founded Bravos. This is origin of both the city's multiculturalism and its hatred of slavery.
Oh, that's really cool. Huh.
Yeah, I thought that was neat.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I like the city so much.
Yeah, there's just like an energy to it of everybody. Like you were comparing it to New York, and I do like the idea of it just being some place that they were like, let's make as many opportunities for folks here as possible. I think that was the only. Okay, yeah, that's it. There's something that Austin mentions here that I had kind of forgotten happens, but I can't. Yeah, I can't tell you about it.
Why can't you tell me if it happened? Because I didn't pick up on it. So
no, it doesn't. It happens in the future, so it's something here that like kind of sets up something that occurs later. That I'm like, oh, right. But yeah, so that's the end of Austin's Info Corner. Thanks, Austin. Appreciate you. All right, so I'm going to say hi to new patrons, and then we will say goodbye. And I want to remind anybody who is, either considers yourself a writer or would like to consider yourself a writer, that we're doing a little thing in the Discord where I'm putting up like prompts, and people are replying with their short, like completed assignments, I guess is the best way to say it, and critiquing one another. And I made like a scale of 1 to 5 how intense you want the critique to be. That way nobody is getting like really hammered on unless that is what they're looking for, unless that's your kink. So if you are a little bit worried about like sharing anything because you don't know whether or not people are going to be assholes, you can like determine the level of asshole you will accept when you post it before anybody even responds. So just thought I would mention that there's a level where it's just like, I'm just posting this so that it's like people know there's somebody participating, but nobody talk to me about it. Please don't.
I need that for my life.
Which is one that I used the other day. Just like, I'm doing it. Okay. But just don't look at me. New patrons. Yeah. We've got Michelle and Anthony Earlham.
Welcome.
Whee! Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for becoming patrons and supporting the show. It really, really, really does mean a lot.
The way is it Michelle and Anthony, or Michelle and then Anthony?
Michelle, no last name, and then Anthony Earlham.
Because it sounds like a Mr. and Mrs. The way you're
I didn't mean to do that. My apologies.
For a second, I was like, "Oh, that's really cute. They joined as a couple."
Mr. and Mrs. Anthony Earlham. No. Apologies, Michelle. I don't have any legal power to marry you to Anthony. Don't worry. But yeah, I appreciate you guys a lot. And I got the nicest compliment the other day. Do you remember that thread I made about like the criticisms that women get on podcasts that men never seem to get?
Yeah, that showed up in your memories. I just saw that the other day.
Yeah, I reshared it because I had forgotten about. There was a moment there where I was in a group on Facebook about women podcasters, and I couldn't believe the shit I was seeing. And I haven't spent that much time in that group recently, so I forgot about the more egregious things. And when it came up in my memories, I was like, oh my God, I forgot people said shit like this. This is totally valid to share this again. But I just want to say thanks. I don't do this often, but sometimes a comment will just like hit you in a spot that you need it real bad in that moment. And this was from Sam Ruffensprog on Facebook. I'm no social engineer, but I hope your influence reaches outside your niche, Natasha. Your fearlessness, ruthlessness, which thank you so much, and fortitude, combined with your self-awareness, empathy, and eye for humor around these topics, has been a guiding light for me in my journey of discovering feminism and, quote, the issues, unquote, over the last decade. Utmost respect to you and your femme cohort who push inexorably into spaces that don't appear ready to appreciate you.
Oh, wow.
Inexorably. So sorry, I mispronounced that. But yeah, into spaces that don't appear ready to appreciate you. But I know that you know that we've been ready and we need you.
Oh, that's really nice. That's good. That's good.
That's just so nice. Thank you, Sam.
Yeah, it's nice. That's nice.
And you're my femme cohort.
That me?
So that's fun also. Like,
look at me.
You
look
and
at
your
me.
femme cohort.
Well, cohort can be more than one person, right?
I have multiple femme cohorts.
So it's like all of us.
Yeah. But yeah, I really, really do appreciate that. And it was just like, it came to me on a day. I had been having such a bad day, Sam. It was one of those where it was like, either everything in the world is wrong or I am really wrong. Something's wrong, though, one or the other. And I was really starting to err on the side of, no, it's me. It's always been me. But every now and then you get a little bit of a jolt that's like, you're doing okay. You know, you may not get it right all the time, but you get it right enough that somebody noticed. And that's nice.
We do.
So, all right. Well, guys, we love you very much. And hope you're enjoying the content. Hope you're enjoying the coverage in the show. Go to the Discords if you want to talk about stuff. Been a lot of lively discussion in there recently as we're getting into the parts of the story that are not in the show. And if you want to participate in that, I think you'll find very, very detail-oriented discussion. That's how I'll say that. All right, everybody. Until next week. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
Bye, guys.
Capitalism is a demon.